I found a letter hidden in my parents' house. It said I was never born there. They've been lying to me my entire life. Distant rumble approaching, father, they're coming back for you. I don't think I belong here. We're coming to get you. It started on a quiet afternoon, the kind that stretches longer than it should. My parents had gone out to visit an old friend, leaving me alone in the house I grew up in. I hadn't been back in years. Everything felt smaller, quieter. Like the walls had exhaled without me there. I wasn't looking for anything important. Just killing time. Opening drawers. Flipping through old notebooks. There's something about returning home as an adult that makes you want to verify your own past, like checking if it still exists. The letter was inside a wooden box in their bedroom closet. I almost didn't open it. It wasn't hidden well enough to be secret, but not visible enough to be casual. It sat behind a stack of folded blankets, like something placed there deliberately and then forgotten. Inside the box were documents. Old ones. Some of them I recognized, birth certificates, insurance papers, things like that. But there was one envelope that didn't match the rest. No address on the front. Just my name. Not the nickname my parents always used. My full name. Written carefully, almost formally. I remember hesitating before opening it. Not because I was afraid, but because something about it felt wrong. Like I had already read it before. Like I already knew what it would say, but couldn't remember. When I opened it, the paper inside was older than the envelope. Slightly yellowed at the edges. Folded twice. The first line read, "If you're reading this, it means we never told you the truth." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. It felt like a joke, or maybe some dramatic nonsense someone forgot to throw away. But I kept reading. We wanted to. More times than you can imagine. But we were told it would be safer if you never knew. Safer. That word didn't sit right. The letter wasn't signed. No names. Just paragraphs of careful, deliberate writing. It talked about the incident, about the transfer, about keeping you hidden in plain sight. And then I reached the part that made my hands go cold. You were not born in that hospital. I stopped reading. I remember looking around the room, like someone might be watching me. The house was completely silent. Too silent. Even the usual creaks and distant noises were gone. I told myself it had to be fake. Something planted. Something old and meaningless. But there was a detail, one small, specific detail, that I couldn't ignore. It mentioned a scar. Behind my left ear. A thin, almost invisible line I've had my entire life. A scar my parents told me I got as a baby. An accident. Nothing serious. The letter described it perfectly. Not just the location, but the shape. And then, beneath that, a single sentence, "It was not an accident." I folded the letter back slowly, my hands shaking just enough for me to notice. That's when I heard something. A soft sound from downstairs. The front door opening. My parents were home earlier than expected. I stood there, the letter in my hand, suddenly unsure of something I had never questioned before, whether the people downstairs were actually my parents. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was returning home. I felt like I had been placed there. I didn't go downstairs right away. I don't know why. Maybe some instinct kicked in, something quiet but urgent telling me to stay where I was. I slipped the letter back into the envelope, but not into the box. I kept it with me, folding it once and sliding it into my jacket pocket like it belonged there. I could hear them now. Their voices. Familiar, ordinary, unchanged. "Are you home?" My mother called. The same tone she'd used my entire life. Warm. Casual. Nothing unusual. But something had shifted. I stepped out of the bedroom and walked toward the stairs, each step feeling heavier than it should. When I reached the bottom, they were both standing in the hallway, smiling. Relieved to see me. Or maybe relieved to see that I hadn't left. "You're back early," I said. My voice sounded normal. Too normal. "Plans changed," my father replied. He studied me for a second longer than necessary. "Everything okay?" There it was. The question people ask when they already suspect the answer. I nodded. "Yeah. Just looking through some old stuff." My mother's smile tightened. Just slightly. If I hadn't been paying attention, I would have missed it. "In our room?" she asked. There was no accusation in her voice. Just curiosity. But I felt it. I shrugged. "Yeah. Hope that's okay." "Of course," she said quickly. Too quickly. "You don't have to ask." Silence stretched between us for a moment. Then my father spoke again. "Did you find anything interesting?" That word. Interesting. Not important. Not old. Not useful. Interesting. I could feel the letter in my pocket, like it was burning through the fabric. I shook my head. "No. Just documents." Another pause. Then my mother stepped closer to me. Close enough that I could see the faint lines on her face, the ones I'd always known. The ones that suddenly felt unfamiliar. She reached up and gently brushed my hair aside. "Your scar," she said softly. "I always forget it's there." My entire body went still. Her fingers hovered just behind my left ear. Not touching. Just remembering. "You got that when you were so little," she continued. "You don't even remember, do you?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. And for the first time, I noticed something I had never questioned before. She was watching my reaction. Not reminiscing. Measuring. I took a small step back. "No," I said. "I don't remember." My father shifted his weight slightly. A subtle movement, but it felt like a decision being made. Then he asked, calmly, "Did you read it?" Everything inside me dropped. There was no point pretending anymore. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the letter. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in just enough to notice. Neither of them looked surprised. Not even a little. My mother exhaled slowly, like she had been holding that breath for years. "We were hoping," she said, "that you'd never find that." I held the letter up slightly. "Then why keep it?" Another silence. Then my father answered. "Because we weren't the ones who wrote it." That wasn't the answer I expected. "Then who did?" I asked. He hesitated. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. "Someone who might still be looking for you." The words didn't feel real. "Looking for me?" I repeated. My mother nodded, her expression no longer soft. "Not you," she said quietly. "Who you were." Something in my chest tightened. "Stop talking like that," I said. "Just tell me the truth." They exchanged a glance. A long one. The kind that carries years of shared decisions. And then my father said it. "You didn't come to us the way we told you." I felt my grip on the letter loosen. "What does that mean?" "It means," he continued carefully, "you were given to us. Not as a baby. Not from a hospital." A ringing sound filled my ears. How old was I? I asked. Neither of them answered immediately. And that was enough to make it worse. Finally, my mother spoke. "You could already talk." Everything went quiet. Not the house. Not the room. Just, everything. Because that meant, no, I said, shaking my head. That's not possible. I would remember. That's why they chose you, my father said. The sentence hit harder than anything else. Chose me for what? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked at the letter in my hand. Then back at me. For the same reason they might come back. A cold realization crept in. What happens if they do? My mother's voice was barely above a whisper. Then you won't be ours anymore. The house suddenly didn't feel like a home at all. It felt like a place I had been kept. I looked down at the letter one last time, scanning the final lines I hadn't fully processed before. There was something written at the bottom. A date. Not in the past. In the future. Today. And beneath it, just 4 words, "We're coming to get you." From outside, somewhere beyond the walls, there was a sound. Low. Distant. But getting closer. Not a car. Not footsteps. Something else. Something I felt before I understood. I looked up at them. At the only people I had ever called my parents. And I realized something that terrified me more than the letter ever could. They weren't wondering if it was true. They were waiting for it.